The most dangerous moment in a struggling relationship isn't the loud fight. It's the quiet moment when effort disappears. Maybe one person stops initiating conversations, stops planning time together, stops apologizing, stops caring whether issues get resolved. That emotional shutdown is often a sign of exhaustion or hopelessness. Relationships survive conflict far more often than they survive indifference.